Hey everybody, this is Vic Whaley,
And Marcus D here.
and we want to thank you all very much for tuning back into Season 2 of the One Candle Society. And we have to thank all of you a great deal for supporting us throughout Season 1. We've met a lot of great people through doing this. We've had a lot of fun making these videos. Now, I want to go back over why we're doing the Harley Quinn. This is an interesting phenomenon. The Harley Quinn has been something that's followed me for a long time, and I've always had a hard time making progress with it by myself. And I'm just glad that so many of you reached out to help us out with this one.
Yeah, this entity took me and Vic so far outside our comfort level in talking about the paranormal that we got to branch out and meet so many different paranormal groups out there and collect so many different stories, ideas, and just different views about what this entity was. And it made for a great research experience for us. When researching the Harlequin, we found ourselves often encountering other stories called like the Phantom Clown phenomenon that we've all seen recently here in the news. Even if you look back at our call to action video, you actually see a lot of pictures in there that are associated with the Phantom Clown phenomenon. But when we put together all of our research notes, we found that there was some very distinct differences between the Harlequin and the Phantom Clown phenomenon. It's a whole video in itself. In this video, we're going to talk about the Harlequin more specifically.
We'll get into Phantom Clowns in a separate one. We should first start with a retouch on the description of the Harlequin. The Harlequin is described as a pale, waxy-skinned, lithe entity, dressed in colorful and antiquated clothing, generally behaving in a bizarre manner. Many of the stories associated with telepathic ability and the ability to cause missing time.
And now months later, and after dozens of interviews, we're finally able to put our best answers forward on what do we think the Harlequin is.
One of the first possibilities we looked at was the alien phenomena. One of the primary reasons we looked into this is the description of these things are very similar to Gray's. Pale skin, big dark eyes, lithe bodies, long fingers, things along those lines. Things that are very commonly seen in ufology. Another one that made us think that this might be a possible connection is the association with telepathic ability, as well as missing time. Missing time being a major part of modern ufology.
However, there's some things that don't quite fit the alien hypothesis. The first one kind of being, even though their physical description is similar to Gray's with aliens, their clothing actually it doesn't quite match up a lot of the stories that people who encountered aliens describe. Most of the time with the Harlequin, it's very bright, colorful, clown-like attire, which is different than the common alien encounter story. Secondly, most people's encounters with the Harlequin, it breaks the mold of people's stories who encountered aliens. Many people that have described being abducted by aliens or encountering aliens describe this very inquisitive experience. Most of the time, aliens typically are trying to find something out about us. There's some sort of scientific purpose for what they're doing, if you will. With Harlequin stories, it's a little bit it's different. It's not like that. Where in Harlequin stories, people are being lured to do things like dancing, going to walks, going to parties, things like that. There's just too many differences.
Another thing that compounds that issue is the modus operandi. In most abduction stories, it goes fairly similar to the coming in at night, which that part is similar, but the abduction with the bright light, scientific study being experimented on, implants being put into place. it just doesn't seem to fit with the standard motivations. Beyond that, there's many of these encounters that occur in near public places. Alien abduction stories almost always occur in a very isolated and usually a very secure place, although they do share some similarities of encounters in the bedrooms. But many of these encounters will occur in places like on a street corner, in a isolated part of town, places that are more open than you generally see with alien abduction.
And even some during the day as well.
Many of them during the day, yes. Another one we strongly considered was that it's demonic activity. One of the things that encourages us towards that is a reference to Harlequins in Dante's Inferno. Another similarity is the Harlequin seems to have an association with breaking down wills over time. Very similar to how the sort of behavior that we see in early aspects of possession. The final one that led us into that being a possibility is the Harlequin seems to encourage people to act in a contrary manner to their normal behavior. Very similar to how a demon would tempt someone to engage in sinful behavior.
But there's some things that make me believe that this entity isn't quite a demonic entity. Most notably, people's behaviors after encountering demonic entities. When people encounter demonic entities, there's often a pattern of self-mutilating behavior. Either cutting themselves, burning themselves, especially a lack of appetite and stop eating. And that is not something that's commonly associated with people after they've had encounters with the Harlequin. In researching this, we looked at MU's article. They were talking about the gentleman Dan Mitchell and his family and their encounters with the Harlequin. And one specific encounter they had was during a mealtime. And it didn't seem like that was something, they seemed to be struggling with, which makes me question whether or not this is a demonic entity. Also, demonic entities are often supposedly known to have knowledge of the unknown, and many times when people, they know things about us already, and specifically, or things that we specifically want, and oftentimes that's not the case with Harlequins. Demons can be very stories where people are encountering demons or demonic entities. They're almost right off the bat are offering something that we specifically want. And in Harlequin stories, when people are being tempted, it tends to be just superficial things, I think, that people are wanting.
Another notable difference is in the Harlequin stories, it doesn't seem to be leading to the end result of possession, which is a very common mainstay in stories involving demons. As an end result, they want to break down your will to get into you, to take you, to defile you. That doesn't seem to be the direction this sort of entity is leading. Another thing that seems odd about it is, although it is trying to tempt you into different behavior, the behavior it's tempting to isn't something that would necessarily be considered, at least by most people, as sinful behavior, or at least it does not seem to be trying to steer you towards the major cardinal sins, which are the sort of things you'll very commonly see in demonic behavior. At this point, we're getting into some of the real nitty-gritty of the issue. We're getting into the entities that we think fitted the most closely. One of the things that we felt fit very, very well are the stories of the Fae folk, or Fairy. Some of the things that are notable similarities. The Fae are associated with wearing colorful clothing. Their descriptions are very similar, like particularly with the descriptions of the Sidhe. The Sidhe are known for being very lithe, very agile, extremely pale, an unearthly quality to them. Something very similar to human, but at the same time, very much not quite human. Also, many stories of the Fae are associated with having a tell, a thing about them that alerts you to them not quite being human. It's generally proposed that they cannot assume a truly fully human form. Another thing that makes them very similar is Fae stories are very associated with the ability to alter one's sense of place and one's sense of time, harkening back to some of the stories of the Harlequin being able to manipulate our perceptions of time or cause missing time. There are lots of stories of people going into fairy circles and disappearing for hours, if not lifetimes at a time. Another thing that draws this story very close is the Harlequin's often described as having the scent of rain-drenched earth. Fae are also associated with having the smell of earth and water. They're sometimes called loam dwellers or hill dwellers, things that dwell in the moist, damp soil. Another thing that's very harkening back to the old Fae tales is many of these sightings or encounters are associated with hilly areas or seem to be dwelling somewhere near hills. Once again, these are commonly considered hill dwellers. The final one I want to go into here is that Fae are very heavily associated with trying to take you somewhere. Their goal is to get you to follow them to some place, trying to take you away from your world into theirs. And that is a key component in many Harlequin stories.
Although it's worth bringing up that in many of these stories that we found of people encountering the Harlequin, many of them describe the Harlequin coming to their home or to their bedroom or wherever they encounter them and simply trying to scare or menace them, which is counterproductive, or it breaks the mold of most traditional stories of Fae, who generally want to take you somewhere for or have a specific purpose of doing something like that. It wouldn't make any sense for them to just come to your home to scare you. They would want to entice you to come with them to somewhere on their grounds and then scare you or try to menace you while they're there, while they would have more power. The only other argument against that is unless you somehow offended them, then they would do this. But that part of the story sometimes would probably be left out.
There are several stories in traditional Fae folklore where someone has offended them or broke a deal with them. In that case, their presence becomes a curse. In that situation, menacing would make sense. But this sort of behavior we sometimes see where they're going back and forth between wanting to menace and wanting to lure, it maybe just doesn't fit quite as well. Now, the thing that we've considered and have decided is one of the most likely possibilities would be a tulpa. First, as a tulpa, a thought form, telepathy would be its most natural means of communication. Much of the engagements with the Harlequin seems to be very dominating, very constantly attention-seeking, which is one of the primary motivations of a tulpa. It wants you to constantly be thinking about it, because it's feeding off your belief in it, because it can only be sustained as a thought form through thought. This need gives it a primary motive for menacing, because when it is menacing you, it is in the forefront of your thought. It's in the forefront of your belief because you are now believing it as a threat. Often in these encounters with the Harlequin, it will sometimes do the most extreme things when you're trying to ignore it. And as a thought form, breaking down your willpower would be another primary motivation for this entity, because it wants to break down your will to disbelieve its existence.
For me, as I was thinking about the Harlequin and how they look, it couldn't help remind me of just this deep fear that I have for clowns. And if you think about it, most of us have just this deep dislike of clowns. And outside of just this creepy vibe that they give us, we gotta ask why are we afraid of them so much? And when I got to thinking about it, jesters, harlequins, clowns, they're always acting like they don't have any inhibitions. They do what they want, when they want, over the top, just all the time. You know, and Vic and I both work in the social work field, and you know, and we've talked with a lot of people in different group settings. And one of the things that I've always found is that people are always seem to be struggling with sort of their inner demons, their inner vices, these inner urges that they have deep down. You know, and I think that's something that we can all relate to. And we're always trying to fight that from coming out. And these entities are literally physical representations of just those inner demons, those inner vices, those inhibitions, just run amok, just out in the open, just all the time. And that's unsettling, and that's, you know, almost at the very human, you know, deep down in the human psyche, it's just something that is just unnerving to everybody on a massive scale. So that's kind of why it made me, you know, to lean towards Tulpa.
Hey guys, thank you for tuning into our very first episode of Season 2.
We want to give a big shout out and thank you to some of the groups who contributed some information to us and helped us to make this video. First, I want to thank Vips, Reading Paranormal, Passing in the Night Paranormal Investigators, and Interface Death. These people were really helpful to us in getting back to us when we were asking for information on this. In the comments below, or in the description below, we're gonna post links to their pages so that you guys should definitely check these guys out. I want to give a big special thank you to Interface Death. These guys are super awesome, super nice, and if you guys like our banner, they helped us make this banner, and we're still super grateful for them for that.
And if you guys enjoyed this video, we have 2 of our videos from Season 1 popping up right now.
And don't forget, keep believing,
'cause we'll keep listening.